It is Friday, December 7th. Let's talk PlayStation. So actually, there is a lot of PlayStation news stories from the past week that I want to talk about with you all, but I think first we'll go over the Game Awards because they just aired last night, so it's kind of fresh in our heads, and some of you maybe saw it, but maybe some of you didn't. We'll just do a quick recap because, granted, it's an award show, but Jeff Keighley does like to bring announcements, surprises, world premieres, things like that. So here's the actual notable things that came out of that show outside of the awards. First up, Journey to the Savage Planet was announced. This is actually Typhoon Studios' debut game. It was a teaser, a little frustrating because it doesn't really show us much of anything about the game. We got a quick synopsis, certainly, but I would have liked to see a little bit more. Speaking of teasers, BioWare actually did tease the next Dragon Age, which is a big deal. I mean, yes, it's a teaser and it's frustrating, but Dragon Age fans are very hectic. I'm sure many of you guys are dissecting this as we speak. Obsidian's new game was finally announced. We know what Obsidian's doing, The Outer Worlds. This looks fantastic, right? This totally looks like a sci-fi Fallout. Sign me up. I cannot wait to see more of this. Mortal Kombat 11 was announced out of left field. Did not see that coming at all. However, it will be coming in April of next year, and if you're into Mortal Kombat, I'm sure you're very pumped about that. And then Far Cry New Dawn was also announced, and this is coming in February. This also looks great. What's great about the Far Cry games is that they're just easy, mindless fun, and this one looks no different. Now, in terms of the specific PlayStation-related announcements, earlier in the week, fuzzy orange dice were sent out to many people in the games industry, and it had a date on it, December 6th. So I knew we were going to be finding out about this before I could talk to you all about it on Let's Talk PlayStation, but many theorized at the time it's probably a Crash Team Racing remake. Sure enough, it is. That was announced at the Game Awards, and it looks great. Now, there's the two big notable things here is that Activision finally understands that people want to play their old IP because they've been hanging on to these characters for so long and not doing anything with them. So it's great that they're finally revisiting these old games and old IP and repolishing them for a new generation, new hardware, making these games look and feel and play great. And that's the other part of it too, which is that we know that Activision has been confidently contracting this work out to the right developers and making sure that these games get done right and they're taken care of, and they're bringing in talent from the original titles just to make sure that everything is fine-tuned and everything plays correctly, so we can confidently sort of breathe easy that Crash Team Racing is going to be a great game. And initially, when they showed this off at the Game Awards, it had PlayStation imagery on it. So initially I was like, oh my god, did Sony just acquire a year exclusivity with this game? Because they did that with the Crash trilogy as well up until it came to other platforms. And then Spyro released day and date with all platforms. So that's what I thought. Well, no, it will launch day and date with Xbox One and Nintendo Switch in June 2019. I'm assuming maybe Sony just has marketing rights or something like that, but either way, that is coming. The other kind of surprising announcement is Persona 5 showed up on stage, which was a little weird. My heart was beating fast. I was like, oh my god, why is Persona here? Actually, Persona 5 characters will be available in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which is great. I mean, and also, by the way, that game just dropped today, actually, so I'm sure many of you are playing it, much like I will be. But that will be part of the first round of DLC characters for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, so that's pretty dope, I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty pumped about that as well. And, it's not super related to PlayStation, mind you. I mean, yeah, Persona 5 is exclusive to PS4, and PS3, mind you, but it's an Atlas game. Sony doesn't own the IP or anything like that. They have no vested interest, certainly. That game it's one of those games where it has heavy PlayStation roots, more or less. It has that connotation of being with PlayStation, mostly. What I honestly found the most fascinating about that show and the most jaw-dropping is Jeff Keighley arranged for Sean Layden, Phil Spencer, and Reggie Fils-Aimé from Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo respectively to come out on stage and give a speech, championing gamers, developers, the people that make our games. Sure, it was a cheesy speech, but I felt it was a genuine speech nonetheless. I thought this was very intriguing because, as far as I know, we've never really seen something like that before in terms of having three major executives from each console manufacturer on stage together and publicly addressing people. And I do feel it was a genuine speech because, and I say this a lot on this channel, and it's typically around times where I feel gamers are being too hyperbolic and overreactive, and in terms of any sort of recent controversy, whether it's EA doing some sort of insidious DLC microtransactions sort of fiasco, or maybe a developer isn't bug fixing or patching their game properly or something like that. And I certainly understand the outrage and demanding a better product, but I feel gamers at times certainly take things a little too far, calling developers lazy or evil or this, that, and the other, which I always find pretty ridiculous, because people cannot be in the games industry and not have a passion for video games. This is not like a kid working at McDonald's that doesn't give a shit, because let's face it, when we go to McDonald's, the people working there don't give a shit, and why would you? You can't be in the games industry and not care about games. And that's the same way for Sean and Phil and Reggie. These guys have been in the games industry for years, for decades, and they're just like any other person. They play games, they're into games, they play the competition, they do that kind of thing. They've gone on record many times to say those kind of things, and the camaraderie in recent years has been pretty good. You see Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo all tweeting each other, congratulating each other. And sure, they're businesses, they're trying to make money, and they are competing against one another, but it is a different time, and it is kind of cool to just see that. So I thought that was a very cool moment that Jeff Keighley arranged. My mini rant for the Game Awards is that too long, too many celebrities, too many live performances. Oh my god, can we please do away with all of those? I feel like the show is honestly a step backwards. I love the fact that in recent years he was making the show more about developers and people in the actual games industry and removing the celebrities. Well, this year he brought celebrities back. Even a Muppet showed up on stage. What is he doing here? Okay, rant over. I don't want this to be too long. Let's go into our first actual PlayStation news story, which was PlayStation Classic. Of course, it's out now. People have it. It's reviewing poorly. I put up my video if you didn't see it yet. Sure enough, it's pretty disappointing. But since people are playing with it, we are now learning a few things. If you connect a USB keyboard to this thing and you hit the escape button, you are given some emulation options, kind of like a little debug menu where you can mess with the frame rate. We've discovered that NTSC versions are available for all the games on there, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just puzzling. Why was this not, 1, turned on? Why, 2, was this not available to consumers in a certain way where you can allow save states for every single game? This even looks more like they really sort of rushed this product. So this kind of, I don't know, this really bugs me. Another thing is that people have data mined PlayStation Classic, and we've actually seen references and code to 36 games that are not available on PlayStation Classic. And I will display this list to you right now. Some very noticeable standouts, some games that should have been on this thing. Like Medieval. I would have loved to see Klonoa on there. You've got Mega Man Legends, Mr. Driller, Driver, Crash Bandicoot, Ridge Racer, Silent Hill, Tomb Raider, Tomba. Oh my god, I would have loved to have Tomba on there. Like, why weren't these on the thing? And I understand there's maybe a scenario where this was all just stress testing the emulator, or these were games that were planned to come to it, but the license just, fell through, or whatever plan or deal they had going wasn't going to work out. It's even surprising to see Tony Hawk on there, because you got to figure right away that game's not going to be able to be re-released because of the soundtrack. I'm sure they could change it, I guess, but you don't want them to really mess with the games too much. So many people are outraged about the fact that they had to put Sony Interactive Entertainment and the new Sony intro, which is the old Sony intro. So there you go, more PlayStation Classic stuff. It's very disappointing that, because this thing could have been so much more, and it's just not. I actually had 3 on order. Actually, I'm only going to keep the 1. I was planning on keeping 2 that were like sealed up forever, and I wasn't really going to touch them ever, but now I'm just going to return them because they're just sitting on store shelves. I mean, we might actually be in a place where we can see this thing on sale soon, so I'm going to take my chance there and just only keep the 1 for now. Now, this next news story is probably just for me, but I'm just throwing it out there. There is a Quantic Dream Collection that was announced and released for PS4, so this will have Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, and Detroit Become Human. I know there is a subset of people that really can't stand these games, and I've seen videos where they really pick out all the flaws and they hate David Cage and this, that, and the other. I'm sorry, I'm one of those people. I genuinely enjoy these games, and I loved Detroit Become Human, by the way. Excuse me, my watch went off. I loved Detroit Become Human so much, and I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. This is a great deal, actually, so you can get all 3 games on one Blu-ray. This will be available at retail as well, so I actually think this is a very good way to get into these games if you haven't done so before. Alright, let's talk about PlayStation Now, the service nobody uses. Sony just added 50 new PS4 games to the service, which they've always been quoting around 650 plus games are available on PlayStation Now. Right away, we can already tell it's now well over 700 games, which is a lot of games. There's a new sale going on. I feel like they run a promotion for this all the time because they're just so desperate to get subscribers onto the service. But same thing where it's like it works out to basically $10 a month, which is very cheap if you do actually enjoy streaming your games. Here's why I actually want to talk about this, though. Apparently, it's up to the point now where there are 250 PlayStation 4 games, so Sony actually caught up quite quick with adding PS4 games onto the service, because initially there was only like 20 or so, and then they said, oh, we'll add more PS4 games over time, and now there's 200 plus PS4 games on there, which is a lot. And the game changer here is that as a PlayStation Now subscriber, you now can download some of these PS4 games. Now, I'm not sure if all 250 are available to download locally to your hard drive, but if it's even close to 100 games, I mean, that's really starting to sound worth it, I think, for a lot of people. That's good. But if it really is to the point where you're getting close to that 250 range of PS4 games that you can download, and then you do have that secondary option of, say, downloading the PlayStation 2 options, or even streaming a PS3 game if you do try to do it or decide to do it. It's still just one of those things where, and if you really objectively look at it, it's kind of a crazy good deal. So the fact that there are so many PS4 games on there, I think, is really starting to make the service very enticing. So if you remember, about 2 weeks ago now, we had a news story about Bloodborne 2, kind of a rumor, mind you, about Dirocine, which was the PlayStation VR From Software game. And in Dirocine, there are many references and Easter eggs to Bloodborne, which fired the internet up into speculating if there's going to be a Bloodborne 2 or if it was hinting at Bloodborne 2. Well, From Software's president, Miyazaki, did kind of rest easy and tell us that, hey, this is just that. They're basically Easter eggs. Don't get yourself fired up. And it's always worth mentioning, he's not going to confirm anything. He's not going to say anything. However, he did have an interesting quote I'd like to share with you all. He said, "In reality, this is just a conversation my team and I had. It's the type of conversation we have during development because there are Easter eggs. However, the Easter eggs isn't an indicator that we're going to release Bloodborne 2. I'm not in the position to talk about the possibility of Bloodborne 2's release. However, we love Bloodborne," and yada yada yada. The thing I want to talk about real quick there is that he's not at liberty to talk about a Bloodborne 2 release. Maybe if we want to be crazy fans, we can look into that a little bit, and the wording is quite odd. But if you think about it, no matter how he answers that, we're going to speculate either way. Just sounded a little curious. Now, I don't believe Bloodborne 2 is in development, but I think it's certainly on the horizon. And it's at this point in time, though, that if we do ever see Bloodborne 2, it's probably going to just be a PlayStation 5 game, because the very fact that I feel like it's not in development, and surely it probably isn't in development, or at the very least it may be in very early pre-production stage, it's gonna be a PS5 game at this point. Now, earlier in the week, kind of actually mid in the week, one particular day, I forget if it was Wednesday or if it was Tuesday, but it was a PlayStation Network outage, and it wasn't maintenance, this was an actual outage, so many users were reporting problems with PlayStation Network and many services. Some people couldn't log in or see their friends list or play their digitally purchased goods, which is always a bit distressing, and there's really not much we can say about this news story other than this is getting annoying. This happens too frequently. It's been since 2013 that Sony's been requiring us to pay for PlayStation Plus to play games online, and sure, they are giving you free games in return for PlayStation Plus, but you now have well over 30 million concurrent users with the network, and this is still kind of inexcusable. So I would like this to stop, please, and it probably won't. For our next news story, now we didn't talk about this a week and a half, 2 weeks ago when it happened, but the Final Fantasy 15 director and famous Square Enix developer Hajime Tabata had left Square Enix, and that was kind of a big deal, but we didn't talk about it. Mostly because sometimes, not often, I talk about third-party related announcements. But this one's interesting because, well, he did form his own new studio now. So Tabata has formed his own new studio, and they do have a project that they are starting up super early. And it's only interesting because, well, they're probably going to be looking for investors, and Sony is always a big player with this kind of thing. So it's almost kind of it's kind of like one of those fishing line things out there, right? Where you can, there's now some very good talent swimming around in the industry. Tabata, I think, was very committed to making Final Fantasy 15 a much better game. And he's got a long-standing history in the games industry. It's not like he's bad by any stretch. He can certainly make a video game, and he knows his way around a video game. Or at least you would hope so. Granted, Final Fantasy 15 took forever, and it was in development hell, and changed hands many times, and this, that, and the other. That's another video. But he did form a new studio, and it's, in the very early stages. He didn't say anything in regards to, much about what they're working on, or, how many people are really on staff. There's not that many. But it is very probable that a startup like this does require some funding, will require, publishing talent at some point. So with Microsoft's recent acquisitions of so many studios and forming a new studio, I think it's in Sony's best interest to maybe get 1 or 2 new studios. I mean, they do have a lot of developers. Sony has many developers, and they have closed many in recent years, but I think it's at this point where maybe Sony shouldn't lose sight of that, which is that they have these worldwide studios, and I think they should, not downplay that. They should keep bolstering it, and I don't think they should bring on that many studios. In recent years, I've said, well, I think they're done buying studios because they keep closing so many, and now they're down to this sort of elite team that keeps pumping out some really great games. But there are 1 or 2 developers that I feel are kind of maybe on the chopping block depending on their next games. I think at this point, maybe it is, now we're going to the next generation. I think it is to the point where maybe Sony should start looking into maybe acquiring new talent, and this could very well be a good idea. Now, one interesting thing that Sony boasted about recently was from the period of mid-October to mid-November, Sony had the most ad impressions when it came to PlayStation ads and video game ads in general. So they were basically number 1 in terms of manufacturers, with 1.5 billion ad impressions, mostly during sporting events and things like that. You have to imagine Sony spent a lot of money to be placed in front of most major NFL games and things like that. There were 13 separate commercials, a big one being for Spider-Man, another one being for Red Dead Redemption. And I guess it's important because this is a very important ad time, mind you, mid-October to mid-November, and even into early December. This is kind of the very hot holiday moment, right? And so having that many ads being placed around is going to cost a lot of money, and it's very important to sell a lot of product. And Sony went into this holiday with, they're going into this holiday with a lot under their belt. I mean, they got PlayStation VR, they got PlayStation 4, obviously at a very attractive price point now. You've got all these big PlayStation exclusive blockbusters that recent released, which is God of War, Spider-Man, Detroit Become Human earlier in the year. You've got all this marketing material represented with Red Dead Redemption 2, which is, of course, easily this year's biggest game in terms of sales and revenue, certainly. And always seeing Sony place all these ads with a big title like Red Dead Redemption, which is a third-party game. That's them sort of planting the seed with many consumers and many uninformed consumers that, hey, this game is, it's a PlayStation game or whatever, you know what I mean? That's why it's so important to see a lot of the times where Microsoft or Sony will buy ad placement and they'll buy marketing rights for a particular title. Sometimes they don't even need to go the extra mile of, say, third-party exclusivity. Sometimes those marketing materials are very important because you're showing so many people the eyes of, hey, check out this awesome game, and you can buy it on PlayStation. So that's a lot of impressions, and that's a lot of money that they spent on that too. Which, while we're on the topic of money, another interesting fact was $9.3 billion were spent just in the US alone for the third quarter, which is an insane amount of money. This is an increase year over year. So, gaming's still as alive as ever, even at the somewhat end of cycle of PS4 and Xbox One. And Nintendo Switch, which actually brings us into our next and final news story. Oh, I shouldn't have said final. That ruins the PlayStation, the Let's Talk Plus segue. Ooh, I want to restart that, but I'm not going to. This analyst firm basically made the prediction that for the year of 2019, Nintendo Switch will be the lead platform in worldwide sales in terms of how many units they'll sell for that particular year, right? So they're actually predicting that Nintendo Switch will sell a little over 17 million units, whereas the PlayStation 4 will sell around 17 million units. And this is only fascinating to me because, that's good numbers for Nintendo. Don't get me wrong, but to see that Sony's still getting that kind of a forecast for next year is quite impressive to me. I would almost feel like PlayStation 4 sales would, I guess it still depends on what comes out. I mean, you're going to expect Days Gone to come out earlier in the year. I honestly feel that The Last of Us Part 2 could very easily hit a holiday 2019 release, which would actually play a major role in sales, certainly. So, I don't know, maybe that is a very real possibility, but it's just, those are monster sales. And so when you expect Sony to probably be around 90 million by the end of 2018, because certainly by the end of December 31st, after the holidays, that's a few million consoles that the manufacturer would have sold. And Sony's at about 86 million at this point, so yeah, they could very easily sell another 3-4 million over the holidays, and they'll hit 90. So to see another 17 by the end of 2019, which is a lot of PlayStation 4s, and that actually is somewhat getting close to that PlayStation 2 number, which I can famously remember 5 years ago when we were talking about PlayStation 4 on this channel. Many of my subscribers, many of you guys, and I know many of you have been watching that long, thank you, but a lot of you would ask me, do you think PlayStation 4 is going to hit, is it going to beat the PS2 in sales figures? And I said, not a chance in hell. And to be fair, I still believe that, not a chance in hell. But to see it get that far and that close is pretty impressive. If you want to go super crazy, and I'll make a super crazy prediction right now, and granted, PS5 would get announced and released by 2020, and that's where you see PS4 sales dramatically taper off. I would have to venture a guess and say PlayStation 4 will probably top off around 125 to 130 million units. I think that would probably be a safe spot to put it in terms of where the system would finally stop being sold in greater numbers and to the point of ceasing manufacturing, and that would maybe be in 2023, 2024. Maybe that's a little too generous. I was going to say 2022, but yeah, I'll go with 2022. Fuck it. And so now that I've ruined my segue, I guess we can get into Let's Talk Plus, our weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you could win a $10 PSN code. I'd like to congratulate Christian M. You are the winner of the $10 code. I know that's a little vague, but hopefully you know who you are. I will be contacting you on Twitter very soon. I try not to divulge too many details about the person, so I don't want to put their Twitter handle up or something, unless they want it, but you won't know until you win. So I will be contacting you very soon. If you want to win a $10 PSN code, it's super easy. The winner will be announced next week, and all you have to do is follow the link down below to the Gleam website. You can follow on Twitter. You can subscribe to the channel. You can retweet something. You can follow me on Twitch. Those are all entries, and the winner for a $10 code will be announced next Friday on Let's Talk PlayStation. But anyway, those are some of the news stories I want to talk about with you all from this past week. So, boy, that grill video did really well. My God. And some people really hated it. Jesus Christ. I mean, yeah, it was a stupid video. I told you it was a stupid video. But if you're seeing this, chances are you still like this channel, so thank you. I hope you enjoyed my really dumb idea from a PS3 meme over 10 years ago now. So stupid. But, hey, a lot of you subscribe too, so if you are watching this, welcome to the channel. We try to do some actual interesting, thought-provoking conversation here and reviews and things like that. But yeah, so if you didn't see the PlayStation Classic video, that is my review and coverage of it. And yeah, it's not that great. But honestly, I don't know what I'm going to be uploading this coming Monday and Tuesday. So maybe a random topic video or maybe something newsworthy will break out, and I'll talk about it right away. I'm trying to do 2 videos a week, LTPS, and then 1 on a Monday or Tuesday. Trying to keep that flow going, so I don't know what you should expect this coming week, but it may be something totally random, just FYI. Anyway, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.